Welcome to Seasteading today. I'm talking with a philosophical and spiritual kindred spirit, Nathalie Mezza-Garcia, who has many interesting things to say. And did I pronounce your
Yeah,
name correctly?
perfect. Thank you. Yes, perfect. Um, yeah, I actually removed so I changed my last name a few years ago because as a writer, I wanted to have a last name that was only mine. It was then later on when I realized that Mezza with two sets is like a Turkish dish or something like that. But yes, you pronounce it well, Mezza-Garcia. Uh-huh.
So, how did you become so passionate about seasteading and the floating island project?
Wow. So should I go back to how everything started?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So everything started because I like to paint a lot. So I used to paint and I love colors, as probably you have already noticed. So after I finished school, I decided to join a visual arts program to dedicate myself to paint. And a few years ago, I had got familiar with these structures called fractals. I don't know if you're familiarized with fractals. Yeah, we have talked about fractals actually. So I was painting a lot of fractals and just enjoying the colors and the freedom and the glitter and all that. And this was around 2005, maybe until 2007. So it was a bachelor program. And then that was during a time where Colombia's political situation, so I'm Colombian, Colombia's political situation was really hard because the president at that time was head of the paramilitary mafias in Colombia. So a lot of people think that the main problem in Colombia is guerrillas because that's what comes out more in the news. But in reality, the main problem in Colombia is the government. And the government, since the 80s, since the 90s, has had really strong links with all the narco traffic. So a lot of students disappeared, a lot of journalists were killed and disappeared also. My mom actually is studying her PhD. She's doing a PhD also, and her subject is a massacre that took place on the year 2000, where some paramilitaries came to a palafittic population, actually to a floating community also. And for 3 days, they orchestrated a massacre called the Massacre of the Drums. So while they were playing drums, they were beheading people and playing football with their heads. And also they killed pregnant women and opened their bellies. So it was a really hard time for Colombia. So when I was painting fractals, it was hard not to relate it to what was happening. So fractals have this really beautiful property called self-similarity. So you can see it here in my tattoo. This is
Mm-hmm.
called a Mandelbrot set. And if you saw this in the computer, you could zoom and zoom and zoom, and you could see that the tiny structure repeats at a bigger scale. So this property is called self-similarity. And the person who discovered it, Benoit Mandelbrot, he did the whole theory of the geometry with maths of fractal structures. And it turns out that fractals are also one of the characteristics of natural shapes, of natural structures. So clouds have them, rivers, for example, if you are on a plane and you look through the window, you might be able to see a river with its tributaries. So your lungs and your respiratory system also, your circulatory system, sorry. So imagine branches and branches, trees, ferns. So I started to think that this property of self-similarity, it would be good if we also found it in political systems, because I was seeing that people were electing politicians in direct democracy systems, but things were not working where I'm from. So I thought, what if instead of having these really fixed and rigid and pyramidal, hierarchical, top-down topologies, I was thinking in terms of topologies and structures, we had more organic in terms of decision making. What if, just like a little part of a fractal represents the whole structure, what if we actually had politicians who represented us? So I stopped my bachelor degree of visual arts 2.5 years when I was already on the way, and I changed to political science, to one of the most conservative and the second oldest university in Colombia, and also one university from where many politicians have graduated. And I am not conservative at all in the traditional sense. I am really open to all sorts of, a lot of things you can think of. So, and also very, very critical, in part thanks to my mom, with the concentration of power and inequalities, which is something that is very vivid in Colombia. So when I was studying political science, I kept this idea of fractals always was in my mind. So I kept studying fractals, and they led me to something called chaos theory. So chaos theory it started some decades ago with climate science. How do you call climate science?
Yes.
With an M.
Meteorology?
Yeah, meteorology. Yes. So you can predict climate not too much in the long term. And climate has these patterns. I don't know if you've heard of the butterfly effect, where it's said that the wings of a butterfly in Rio can cause a hurricane in Texas. So that is called chaos theory. And it basically consists on how when you have a system that is very complex, one tiny little change in this moment of time can produce huge, big, unexpected results. So I found out while I was studying on my own that fractals were related to chaos theory because they presented this property of being chaotic. Not chaotic in the traditional sense of mess and disorder, but instead the possibility of being affected in really unpredictable ways by a very small transformation. And then I found out that this was part of a bigger theory, of a bigger group of sciences called the sciences of complexity, which study systems that, like human societies, like political systems, or like your body and mind, are simply too complex, that have so many elements, so many different types of interactions that are unpredictable, that are open, that you cannot really trace a very defined boundary between what is inside the system and what is out, because they are always constantly processing information with the environment. And like I'm breathing right now, I'm also processing visual information. You are also. So this type of complex systems that are too complex, yes, were studied by complexity. So complexity gave me some, like a space to develop my idea of changing the structure of the systems of decision making. And instead of having that rigid type of structure that direct democracies have, where there's a few people here in power and a lot of other people in the bottom that are just going crazy and don't really have very, very direct ways of permeating the decision-making process, I wanted just to go to more complex and probably fractal topologies. So I thought, what if? Because we live in a network-mediated world. So I really thought that the internet had the capacity to make decision-making more bottom-up. And to a certain extent, it is like that. So I saw cases, for example, where in Finland a law was crowdsourced. So the document was written on a Google Doc and a lot of people, like 30,000 people, participated. We have also seen cases like the Arab Spring, where Twitter started whole political revolutions or mediated them. So I wanted to have some form of decision-making mediated by the internet that allowed more people to be part of the decision-making process. Something that I was not seeing in Colombia, for example, although my intention was not to focus in Colombia only. I wanted something that wasn't limited by the traditional boundaries of nation states, something where your personal identity was not defined nor limited by your territory, your random territory of origin, because that's just one of the, like I call them, one of the dimensions of your identity. But there are so many other traits. Some of them you acquire them, some of them have nothing to do with the place where you were born. So yes, so I started thinking about an open source global legislation system. So a system where we took all the properties of open source software and we applied them into a system of decision making. So things that make open source software really cool and special, like the fact that anybody can contribute with a little bit, no matter where they are. So for me, that is really, really, really cool. Direct participation, small contributions. And then I realized that what worked in a software environment, the fact that there were no boundaries and you could still be part of the final product, even after having contributed just a bit, it didn't work when it came to politics, because politics is not software. I mean, there is politics in software, and software also leads to certain types of politics, but it ultimately, it's not the same to make a computer program than making a decision that's going to affect something related to territories. So I was looking for cases where I'm almost finishing.
No, please, please keep going.
I was looking for cases. Okay, so now I already got to the part where the PhD. So that was what I started looking into the PhD. So I did my what I worked in previous years was self-organized socio-political interactions, and how. So I did pursue a bit that idea, how different types of network topologies could handle or harness better the complexity of human social systems. And I wanted to find a practical way, and that's why I started a PhD. I wanted to just knowledge. So I was looking at a few cases where it seemed like the territory could lead to different types of political relations. And I had on my magnifier glass, I had Mars. I had like 6 things that I don't remember at this moment, and one of them was Seasteading. But I hadn't really, it wasn't until January, one day when I was about to sleep, and I was looking at my phone, and I received an email from the Seasteading Institute saying that we've signed an agreement with a host nation, that I thought, yay, I'm going to choose this as my case study, because even if I had wanted to choose it before in academia, you know how academia is. In academia, if you say hi, you have to justify hi. So in the past, I had already proposed theoretical ways of exploring the problem, but I had some obstacles, because when you talk about other forms of decision making and you don't base it on something that it's taking place right now, you can be labeled as speculative, even if I know that what I was talking about was right. Also, because the main subject that I started working on was anarchism, because I realized that, and this is my favorite analogy ever. So when I was studying fractals, it wasn't not only about the computer generated forms, but it was also about nature. And as for you and I have talked already, nature has this really beautiful property of self-organization, which means local communication that from where coherent, emergent organization takes place. So I thought that if nature, which is the most complex and at the same time most organized system that exists, doesn't need any type of central control, doesn't need any type of president, doesn't need any type of governor, nor military, nor coercion, external coercion. If nature manages to create coherent forms and structures and whole ecosystems, very well integrated ecosystems, without any central control and simply by means of self-organization, I do think that human societies have this, well, they could, in theory, do so too, right? So, but if we are talking about self-organization on a political context, then this means that there is, and self-organization, one of the things it means is basically, yes, no central control. And if you talk of no central control in a political context, then you're talking about something that cannot be a nation state. You're talking about something more polycentric. And I thought, yeah, the future seems to be anarchic. So, because it seems that that's where we are heading to with all these network-mediated technology. So I started doing a thesis about anarchism, and it was really cool because I got funding from the Colombian government. Yeah, but
Really?
so I have a funding from the Colombian government, but because I put it in self-organization and not anarchism, it doesn't seem as politically incorrect, even if it's the same thing. Later on, I realized that I could not think that all the world in the future could be anarchic because the world is so much more complex and diverse, and that instead, that diversity of future systems of decision making, that they will exist, is more something that I now call heterarchical, where you can have everything, the whole spectrum, from very centralized systems to all sorts of nested systems with so many levels, everything you can think of, star topologies like Apple, for example, with Steve Jobs, and then he directs everything, or something more like Facebook, everything, every single type of structure, you can have it on a hierarchy, which is a form of, yeah.
Yes.
That's how I got to seasteading anyway.
So,
and I think that our time is over.
No, I have so many questions. So the language we're using right now is anarchic or heterarchy, which is a word I think you invented, which I really like. Because
I appropriated it from a complex systems point of view, but someone called Warren McCulloch invented it because he was studying neuroscience. He's a neuroscientist, and he was studying the structure of the brain.
Yes. So, no one is in charge of language. No one designed it, but it has emergent order.
Yes.
And you can think of it emerging out of anarchy, but since there are lots of languages all coming together, you can see it emerging in different places and evolving. And so let me see if I'm learning a lot from you here. I want to see if I understand fractals.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm going to take this from the Big Bang all the way to seasteading as quickly as I can.
Nice.
So I think of nature as this exploratory system that just sort of moves around chaotically, and eventually randomly it hits upon an iterative process that works at a very small level and can copy itself, and then starts to build on itself and form what's analogous to a fractal, or perhaps even technically a fractal.
Yes.
And that happens with even at the level of the molecules forming and then going through stars and forming more complex molecules. It even happens at the level of life itself. It eventually stumbles on a replicator. So it's this exploratory system that eventually randomly stumbles on a copying mechanism, and that keeps making copies of itself. And then that changes slightly over time and becomes a new thing. So you get this, it explores the space, right? And nobody is in charge of it.
Nope.
Nobody's designing it from the top down.
Nobody.
And this is where we we run into the trouble of us trying to talk about this in public, because we run into the difference between the technical use of the word anarchy and the common use of the word anarchy. So when you captivated us with that initial tragic story that your mother is writing about people being slaughtered and women being cut open, some people would say, oh, that's complete anarchy. So they're using it. What's that?
That was government, not anarchy.
Oh, that was government doing it.
Yeah, because our militaries are financed by the government. They are just an undercover force. That was
wow. That's how horrible.
How can you not become an anarchist when you've seen so much? How can you think that the type of political systems that we have work?
It is remarkable, and I think I might have an answer.
Okay.
Which is, it gives us great anxiety to think that no one's in control. Our cortisol rises the more life seems chaotic, and the more we cling to a way of looking at the world, the more secure we feel.
Yes.
And I think I refer to this as kind of a secular creationism, that order can't be emerging from the bottom up because people will do bad things. We need a central group of people that's in charge of everybody else who won't do bad things.
No, that's the Leviathan. That's what Thomas Hobbes said. That was his justification for creating, for this fake social contract that we supposedly sign at some point where we're not even alive. That human societies used to be in such a chaotic, in the common sense of the word, chaotic state of nature that they needed something to control them.
Right.
But it's not like that.
And I see why that would emerge from our fallacies, but when reading papers like yours, you see that order sort of emerged. There's no central human being that's smart enough to know how to control everyone or virtuous enough. So it emerges from the bottom up, and then so I think of seasteading as an attempt to apply this theoretical insight to the first piece of a fractal. That we're going to do this fluidly on a very small island, on a very small scale, and discover something that might be able to iterate on itself. Yes. So that the overhead view of the ocean will look like the tattoo you have on your arm as little things start to spread out. And you won't need centralized control. It'll emerge from the bottom up and engage the intelligence of the global brain. And really, I just think of it as so we need a better word that's more politically correct, but it's like monarchy is ruled by one. Yeah. Democracy is ruled by the demos, or the mob, or the majority. Yes. Anarchy is no rulers. So it's a way of saying rules are good, but rulers are a problem.
Exactly. It's the same distinction between legislation and law.
Right. Yeah. So we want to empower people to participate in the creation of rules.
Exactly.
In a decentralized way so that it emerges. So I like the heterarchy. Heteroarchy. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Heterarchy. So heterarchy is very humble because it simply acknowledges that not everything can be put on the same basket.
Right.
That's one of the things that I like the most about it.
Yes, and the fact that you started as an artist and emerged into a complexity theorist, it illuminates now how I see you. It seem like that. And I'm sort of similar. I started out as a novelist and a poet. And how did you decide the Floating Island Project was a practical application of your theories?
So the Floating Island Project is one. It's one example of seasteading, just one. So anarchy, in the sense in which I was using it, you can speak of two different levels. One at a one system level. So let's say instead of having a nation state, then you have something else that is not a nation. That I see it on the possibilities that the floating island can bring. Probably, or I don't know yet to which extent this the floating island itself will embody it. Probably not so much, but it is a first step into that stateless future that I want to see. And also, being one example of seasteading, I do see that seasteading, seeing from the outside, is, I know that it is more closely associated to libertarianism, also because of its, well, the Friedman tradition. But at a structural level, if you take all the multiple seasteads assembling and disassembling, I see no type of central control. So I also hope that at a structural level, that is also anarchist. Now, I don't have any particular preference. I'm not in a position right now where I can say this is the best type of system we can have. But I do know that in terms of the overall view, no central control is the best type of structure we can have.
Yes, and
so that's why I see the Floating Island project as one step into that future that I believe it's much better for humanity and other species also.
Yes, and ecologists and environmentalists should love this because it imitates nature, exactly. Which doesn't have one thing in control.
Exactly.
And I think of it as the first little replicator that we're putting in the primal soup of the ocean. As a matter of fact, I have it right here. There. See, this is primordial soup.
Primordial soup, awesome. Warhol soup.
Yeah, you got to look this up on the internet. It's hilarious. A quick meal in 4.5 billion years, and everything in it is funny. The ingredients, it breaks down the chemistry. It's a label you can put on any can of soup.
Oh, but that's the real Andy Warhol, or that is something else?
This is something else. It's not Andy Warhol. It's somebody just making a joke, turning Campbell's soup into primordial soup.
I know what it is. The primordial soup of biology.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And so long as these little islands can, so first of all the previous nation states are founded in these previous centuries.
Yeah.
And we know so much more now. Yeah. And now all the people with new ideas can go try them out.
Yeah, exactly. And that is good. For example, I am staying here at the house of one of the architects of Blue 21, and she's from Italy, Barbara. And she received her Italy, like a letter on the mail from the Italian government, and we're here in the Netherlands, for her to vote for the presidency. And she was telling me that it's Berlusconi and that he's been in power, you know, how, like, for how long, that he's super backwards and has a lot of power, has a lot of concentrated power also, and that his dad, who is a communist, is going to vote for Berlusconi because there is simply nobody better. Well, they are, but not in a position where they can be elected for presidents. What are you eating?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, as long as you keep choosing the lesser evil, you realize you're choosing evil.
Yeah, exactly. So she was like, oh, I need to vote. And I was like, no, don't vote. Wouldn't it be so good if people realize that their vote is not going to do any single little change? It's not going to do anything. Her vote is not going to change absolutely anything in Italy. It's not even insignificant. It simply doesn't matter.
Yeah, if you don't play the lottery, then you shouldn't vote because you probably
Good point. Yeah.
Because the lottery, maybe there's a 1 in 100 million chance that I'm going to win it, but at least it costs me $1 and takes 5 minutes. if there's a 1 in 100 million chance I'm going to make the difference to the leader of the free world in the United States, it requires hours and hours and days of my mental energy arguing with my friends and getting on Facebook and sharing, demonizing the people I hate and dividing. The waste of human creativity that goes into this is just tragic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a system that only benefits politicians. Politicians are their friends. And I understand why politicians want to continue to be politicians. It just pays well.
It's a good deal.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe I'll run for president of Colombia in 2022 so that I can create a lot of systems.
Yes. So you can legalize seasteads in your territorial waters.
I love it. I love it. Yes. 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 I would make that country a lot more technologically oriented and computer science oriented and system oriented.